Hare Krishna. I purposely came to San Diego to participate in this program because I wanted to hear more about His Holiness Gunagrahi Maharaj's glories and how he touched people, and I knew he was a very important part of San Diego. I could say a lot, but I think I'll start sort of towards the end. Maharaj was staying in Dallas, and he was sick, and he was looking into different cures, and I would come to visit him every day. And one thing, and many devotees were, I think he already had the idea of going to India. I think a lot of devotees felt that they wouldn't see him again. So they were coming to, interact with him. And what struck me was how perfectly he reciprocated with each and every person. It was amazing. Even people who didn't have that much interaction with him, but they were just part of the Dallas temple, and he just said the exact perfect thing to each person. And I really like I don't know who said it, like no one was too high and no one was too low. I mean, that was really summed it up. And it hasn't come up, and I don't even know if it should, but he seemed to have a thing for black people. He liked black people, and in some of our more confidential times together, he'd express his appreciation for them. But I mean, I thought of it because one of the people who came to see him was the head pujari in Dallas, Mother Chandravali, who happens to be black-bodied, but just spoke perfectly with everyone. And but gradually he developed the conviction that he had to go to India. The different cures he was trying in America weren't working, and he was doing research, and he thought he could go to India. And so I was there, a few of us for H H Swami, to see him off. And after he got to India, we were in regular communication, and he had so many, there were like so many twists and turns during his stay in India. And so I think I'll read something I wrote for him just after he left. For his memorial there in Vrindavan. So I call this the opportunity to serve Gunagrahi Maharaj. Because I guess I'm thinking of a quotation now, because so many devotees have spoken so much about what he did for them, but of course it was reciprocal. But our essence is service, and so I was appreciating the opportunity to serve him. My dear Gunagrahi Swami Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, to your lifelong service to him, and to your divine departure to his lotus feet. When you were leaving Dallas to go to India in the face of your cancer, you gave me the opportunity to see you off. When you were traveling in India and dealing with so many issues and developments, you gave me the opportunity to communicate with you regularly. When you returned to Vrindavan to stay, you allowed me to accommodate you and your staff in my house in Ramanreti, where you instituted your wonderful nightly kirtans. And I accommodated your staff in other places in my charge as well. And when you were ready to leave your body, you gave me the opportunity to serve you indirectly when you moved to the Bhaktivedanta Hospice, which I helped establish. Now you have gone to Srila Prabhupada to serve him and his lords, and I pray that you will give me the opportunity to serve you there, too, which probably would like that opportunity. Maharaj, I love you. Hare Krishna. With appreciation, gratitude, and love, your eternal aspiring servant. Now, one of my disciples from South Africa wrote a really beautiful and deep appreciation of Gunagrahi Maharaj. I thought I'll read that too. Appreciating Gunagrahi Maharaj from Raghava Pandit. It's a letter addressed to me, but it's about Gunagrahi Maharaj. Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. A few days ago, I saw a clip of you and others bidding farewell to Gunagrahi Maharaj in Dallas. He was on his way to Vrindavan. I never met Maharaj, but I've always found his talks deep and profound. About a year ago, I read a blog post of his which was so inspiring that the words came alive for me in a very mystical way. Here is the posting. It's called, this is Gunagrahi Maharaj's posting, it's called Happiness and Stained Glass. And this is what he posted. Srila Prabhupada says, if one is situated in real Krishna consciousness, he can face the most severe type of adversity and remain completely undisturbed. Journey to Self-Discovery, 7.3. It is easy for us to smile when things are going our way. But spiritual advancement allows us to be happy at other times as well. Here is a nice quote in this connection. Quote, people are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out. But when darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is light from within. That's from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. It was very important in the hospice field. Gunagrahi Swami. So now Raghava Pandit is speaking again. Then last year I found his Vyas Puja offering very inspiring. It's inexplicable unexplainable, why the words of some devotees touch me more than others. I read only a handful of offerings last year, and Maharaj's was one of them. Dear Srila Prabhupada, when I was a little boy, I knew nothing about the soul. All I thought was that when you die, you don't exist anymore. That frightened me. Some nights I would lie awake crying after my mother had tucked me in. I would call out for her. She would run up the stairs, hold me in her arms, and ask me what was wrong. I don't want to die, I repeatedly sobbed. She would rock me back and forth, patting me on the head, saying, "Everything will be all right. Don't worry. Everything will be all right." I would finally lie back down, emotionally spent, and go to sleep. But that anxiety in the depth of my heart still remained. As I grew older, I became so absorbed in sense gratification that I stopped thinking about death. Nor was the subject ever dealt with in high school or college. When we all started experimenting with mind-altering drugs at the university, we would stay awake at night speculating about what was reality. And again the subject of death came up. But this time I somehow got the idea that we were all eternal, and that, hey, maybe we were even God himself. Or itself. The idea of being God sounded pretty darn good. Somehow, though, it never seemed to work in my practical life. Quite the contrary. My suffering and confusion only mounted. Then that day of days finally came. Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. You lit up my life with the magic of the holy name. I had never seen or felt anything like it. Nevertheless, it was still so hard for me to let go of my desire to enjoy. Maya had to beat me to the ground to get me to finally crawl helplessly through the doors of your temple. Home at last. And finally, I came to understand the real meaning of death, of the self, and of God. After many lifetimes, that deep-rooted fear of non-existence had come to an end. Nowadays, death once again is very much in the forefront of my mind. My health is declining, and the doctors say the disease is terminal. But even if it is, the purification it has put me through has been saving my life, my real life, more than any bodily cure I could ever have found. For along with my illness, you have come to purify me, forcing me to learn very hard and painful lessons I had always so stubbornly avoided. You are also so mercifully flooding me with the most wonderful support of your loving devotees. On account of the above, being faced with death has thus become one of the best things that has ever happened to me, rather than the unthinkable misery I did not know how to confront when I was young. I am reminded of how the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam so graphically explains that it is becoming the general rule in Kali Yuga that relatives and friends of so-called loved ones who are dying are often able to think only of how they themselves will benefit from their dear one's demise. I mean, unfortunately, I've heard from many devotees whose father or mother was in the process of leaving, the I guess you could say family politics that would take place with the other siblings. Yeah, it's really quite ugly in a way. And it's just, lust, greed. So, I'm reminded of how the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam so graphically explains that it is becoming the general rule in Kali Yuga that relatives and friends of so-called loved ones who are dying are often able to think only of how they themselves will benefit from the dear one's demise. They have neither the knowledge nor the desire to comfort and uplift their lifelong companions when they are about to leave this world. Thus, multitudes are dying in loneliness, bewilderment, and despair. There is no doubt that had I remained embedded in the culture I was brought up in, I would now be suffering the same fate. I would have had the same fears as always, not knowing where to turn for the answers and not feeling the genuine affection I would have so desperately needed. But you intervened and picked up this lost, sobbing spiritual child and held him in your arms. And you have been rocking him back and forth ever since. You have instilled within me that tranquility and faith I had always been looking for. I am at last convinced that yes, just as my mother always said, everything will be all right. Your most grateful servant, Gunagrahi Swami. So now we come back to Raghava Pandit's letter in which he quoted Maharaj's offering. Sometimes it is said that the truth sits on the lips of a dying man. I felt that Lord Krishna has imbued Gunagrahi Maharaj's personality with a special sweetness, and I feel fortunate that his words could inspire me further in Krishna consciousness. Your servant Raghava Pandit Das. So one little anyway, I just in a way it's a small thing, but to me it really shows Gunagrahi Maharaj's compassion and practicality and selflessness. So I would go, I mean not so often, but for a couple of years I joined His Holiness Indraduma Swami's Polish Festival tour. And the Harinams were ecstatic. They would go out like pretty much all day doing Harinam. And then in the evening they'd have the festival. Thousands of people would come. So I wanted to be out as much as possible. As long as they were out, I wanted to be out. But I noticed that Gunagrahi Maharaj wasn't going out during the day. He was only coming in the evening. And then too, not necessarily for the whole evening festival. So I asked him why. I said, I'm out there every possible moment, but I don't see you out there. And he said, Indraduma Swami is like the general leading the charge. And wonderful as the program is, and inspired as the devotees are, they're also human beings. They also have problems. So while Maharaj is out, leading the charge, I stay back to try to help the wounded soldiers that Maharaj can't attend to while he's leading the charge. This is, I don't know, it's going from the sublime to ridiculous, but one evening, I guess, afternoon or evening on that tour, Gunagrahi Maharaj made pizza. And it was just him, H Swami, and me. And I was like a cardiac patient, so I was supposed to be on a low-fat diet, and so there are the three of us in this pizza, really gorgeous pizza, and I'm like in a dilemma, and I'm saying, this really isn't on my diet. But it looks so good, and you made it with so much devotion. And so it's sort of going around for a while. And then at that time, H Swami gave the conclusive judgment. And he said, the main factor in heart disease is anxiety. So you shouldn't be in anxiety at all, and just eat it. One little, somehow this act of Gunagrahi Maharaj's that I'm about to mention had a profound effect on me. And it was at the time when I had cardiac bypass surgery. And he sent me a real nice email. It made such an impression on me because at that time I hadn't really had that much association with him. But somehow I was very touched by that. I did mention it to him later. He sort of discounted it, but that really somehow had a profound effect on me and really endeared him to me more. So I'll read one more sort of tribute. This one is also very. It was sort of like no one is too high and no one is too low. So this one focuses on no one is too low. It's from His Holiness Danadar Swami. Many of you reading this have been inspired and blessed with the association of Raghunath and Kaustubha. Raghunath used to be in the LA area. Anyway, then he moved out east. He used to teach yoga. Anyway, and Kaustubha, he's initiated by Tamal Krishna Goswami, connected with the Bhakti Center in New York now. So many of you reading, but see what Maharaj says here, that can apply to all of us. Basically, he's saying any of you who've been inspired by Raghunath or Kaustubha owe a debt of gratitude to Gunagrahi Maharaj. But I think any of us who've been inspired by anyone here also owe a debt of gratitude to Gunagrahi Maharaj, because he's so much a part of what everyone here is, and how they mean so much to us. In a sense, Maharaj was one of the last of the real old-time Sankirtan generals, those who set lofty goals in the mission of Srila Prabhupada and moved heaven and earth to achieve them. 13 years ago, Maharaj invited me to Argentina to preach. I gave classes twice a day in the ISKCON temple, a very humble place that had been their residence for over 20 years. Maharaj had been there only a short while, but within a few years marshaled, pushed, and led the forces of the yatra to acquire and renovate 2 attached petite hotels in the center of Buenos Aires in order to create arguably one of the most successful temples in South America. Shortly thereafter, a struggling yatra was flourishing. When Raghunath became inspired to join the Harekrishna movement, which in those days meant living in an ashram, he moved to the ISKCON Gunagrahi farm in Pennsylvania. And this is like so telling and so significant. And many of us, I've heard from you how Maharaj just like sort of picked you up and, engaged you, put you somewhere else that transformed your life. When Raghunath became inspired to join the Harekrishna movement, which in those days meant living in an ashram, he moved to the ISKCON Gunagrahi farm in Pennsylvania. Gunagrahi Maharaj happened to be visiting there at that time. Maharaj thought, why should one with so much potential to communicate Krishna consciousness be stuck on a farm? So he brought Raghunath to Washington, D.C., where Maharaj's Krishna Fest program daily performed dynamic kirtan on the mall in front of the Smithsonian. A few months later, I got a call from him, from Gunagrahi Maharaj. Maharaj, I had Raghunath start a straight-edge band again to spread Krishna consciousness through his movement. Gunagrahi Maharaj is like so ingenious and so innovative and so intelligent. It's called Shelter. Now this band, I don't know how much any of you know about it. I heard about it as a devotee. But once I was visiting my sister's house when my nephew was, maybe in his early teens, and he had some friends over. And they were talking about the band Shelter. And I said, "Oh, you know Shelter? Yeah, I know Raghunath, who's the leader of the band." They said, "You know Raghunath? Wow!" So this is like Gunagrahi Maharaj's glory, that he engaged Raghunath in that way, and that it had such an influence. Maharaj, I had Raghunath start a straight-edge band again to spread Krishna consciousness through his music. It's called Shelter. We soon will tour all over the USA. I can't do this alone. Please come with me. He even picked up Gunagrahi Swami. Soon we were traveling all over the USA with Shelter as the headliner band and 3 other minor straight-edge bands arranged by Raghunath, including Inside Out, which was led by the then unknown Zach de la Rocha, who would later become the leader of the seminal band Rage Against the Machine. From Shelter, literally hundreds and hundreds of young people started to fill the pretty much barren ISKCON temples in North America. Shortly after that, Shelter expanded the scope of its program to bring the disaffected youth throughout the world to the path of bhakti. Through Raghunath's effort, which was the brainchild and inspiration of Gunagrahi Maharaj, the mission of Srila Prabhupada, which suffered so much after his passing, was revitalized in America and much of the world. It is a service that is not acknowledged nearly to the degree that it should. There are preachers, he has in quotation marks, and then there are preachers in italics. Those whose very life breath is dedicated to giving people the jewel of devotion. Maharaj left no stone unturned to personally and without judgment reach out to anyone he thought he could inspire to serve the mission of his guru. It's a rare quality. Dotting the globe, especially in the Americas, are countless devotees who came to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada only by the compassion, insight, and personal effort of Gunagrahi Maharaj to make them Krishna conscious. One of those numerous jewels is Kaustuba Prabhu, the senior educator at the Bhakti Center. Maharaj visited him in his apartment in Havemayer Street in South Williamsburg, arguably the most decrepit and dangerous neighborhood in New York City at the time, where he inspired Dave, now Kaustuba, to travel with him and to soon commit himself to Srila Prabhupada's mission. I mean, I myself am astonished just reading and hearing all these stories, how daring he was, how fearless he was, and how he just went and got people. You know, I don't even know how he would figure out where to go, but somehow he knew. He went and he just got people, and just picked them up and engaged them in transcendental service. Maharaj visited him in his apartment on Havemayer Street in South Williamsburg, arguably the most decrepit and dangerous neighborhood in New York City at the time, where he inspired Dave, now Kaustuba, to travel with him and to soon commit himself to Srila Prabhupada's mission. 2 days before Gunagrahi Maharaj left this world in Vrindavan, surrounded by the devotees chanting the holy name, including his loving godbrothers, I got a call from Kaustuba asking me if I could find a way to send a letter to Gunagrahi Maharaj expressing his gratitude. I immediately dictated his letter through WhatsApp to a friend helping to care for Maharaj, who played it for him. The following day, I got a message from Gunagrahi Maharaj. With all the strength he could muster, in the most heartfelt voice, a short message for Kostuba came. Love and gratitude to you in my heart. Love in my heart. So much love in my heart. So much. Burijan Prabhu, who taped the message, described that as Gunagrahi Maharaj was losing strength and practically incapable of uttering a single word, Maharaj uttered almost inaudibly so much gratitude, while placing his hand on his heart, indicating his love. Each word had almost a raspy, whistling quality that seemed to slightly crescendo and get higher at the end of each phrase as the air needed to produce the words continued just a short while after finishing the phrase he wanted to produce. True gratitude is the budding of our real self. In my mind, the depth and humility in which Gunagrahi Maharaj spoke was coming straight from his eternal identity with Krishna. It was the humble and loving voice of the residents of Vrindavan. When I heard the tape, I somewhat broke up. I remember the deep humility, gratitude, and affection Maharaj had for Srila Prabhupada, those who followed his footpath. I want to reread this because what he's saying is well, I'll read it again. I think you'll follow it. I remember the deep humility, gratitude, and affection Maharaj had for Srila Prabhupada, for those who followed his footpath, and for almost anyone with a spark of devotion. Mostly, I reflected on his affection for me. Maharaj's passing was perhaps the most glorious departure of a devotee in ISKCON since the passing of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj. It made me reflect on the qualities he demonstrated that attracted such extraordinary mercy. Gunagrahi Maharaj was exceptionally humble. Although he was quite senior to me, he always treated me as his superior. Although out of humility, he also never hesitated to correct me if anything I did wasn't a reflection in his mind of the highest ideals of presenting Krishna consciousness to others. Other devotees have also mentioned Maharaj's correction, loving correction, which is very important. So he never hesitated to correct me. For example, my sometimes raggedy Vrindavan dress rightly disturbed him, and he would tell me. Like everyone else, he also made mistakes, but there was nothing in the very depth of his heart but the mission of Srila Prabhupada, and he bowed down to the feet of anyone with even a spark of desire to assist in that mission. Gunagrahi Maharaj was endlessly attracted to the holy name and deeply loved his godbrothers, friends, and disciples. It seems at times, more than anything else, he was the friend of the poor. He does have this special type of affection for the downtrodden and motley, those who seem to be surviving in Krishna consciousness only by his compassion and inspiration. Some time before he left, I also received a message from him. It began with the heartfelt and somewhat unusual phrase, "Love you, honey." He spoke of what I meant to him. He said that Srila Prabhupada was the center and acknowledged that I may not be able to come immediately to Vrindavan because of my service, although obviously he wanted that. I had some previous commitments to 2 festivals that I had organized where people had already booked tickets to fly in and participate. I had moved up my ticket to fly to India when those commitments were finished. But as soon as I got the message that he was now beginning to leave, I booked my flight to leave the next morning to India from Colombia to be with him. Unfortunately, he left just a few hours after I booked my ticket. I pray that he will forgive me for not being there at his side. I bow my head at the lotus feet of the illustrious Vaishnavas such as Burijan Prabhu, Ritatvaja Swami, Govinda Maharaj, and Radhanath Swami, who dropped everything to be at his side. Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and the pure devotees he brought to the path of devotion and then took from this world to directly serve him. All glories to Srila Gunagrahi Swami. So just a little more about Maharaj's passing. I was in Dallas with Ritatvaja Swami, and Ritatvaja Swami had some different ideas of programs that would have been very good for Krishna consciousness. And then we got the news about Gunagrahi Maharaj's decline. And Ritatvaja Swami asked me what I thought he should do. And, I don't know, I guess I consulted internally, and it was just very, I went over all the other options. That's not so important, that's not so important, that's not so Go to be with Gunagrahi Maharaj in Vrindavan. That's important. So he went, and he arranged with Burijan Prabhu that Burijan Prabhu would also go. And around that time, there was a big festival in Houston. It happened that the Memorial Day weekend, the Labor Day weekend was, John Mastami and Srila Prabhupada's Vyas Puja, and then that week there was like a kirtan mela. So Indradumya Swami came, Govinda Maharaj came, Bhattahari Das Prabhu came, and so one morning we decided to phone Gunagrahi Maharaj, and so Indradumya Swami spoke first. He spoke like so eloquently, so beautifully, and I thought, wow, that's like so nice. Then Govinda Maharaj spoke. It was the same thing. And then I was thinking, like, oh God, what am I going to say? So then when my turn came, Gunagrahi Maharaj, he just started to express his appreciation for me. He just went on and on. And I guess, I was happy that he saw that in me. But what I really got out of it, which comes to my mind right now, is that he saved me from the anxiety of having to speak by his speaking so much about me. And then Govinda Maharaj said, because he came for this festival, but right afterwards he wanted to go back to be with Gunagrahi Maharaj. So he said to Gunagrahi Maharaj, and he has a slight southern drawl, which he might accentuate for effect. And he said, you all better wait for me. You better wait till I get back. Because if you don't wait for me, I'm going to kill you. So, yeah, it was, and he did, and I don't know. I mean, I was watching. I was watching on the internet the whole proceedings. It was amazing. I mean, what was going on in that room, and especially Govinda Maharaj felt so indebted to Gunagrahi Maharaj because Gunagrahi Maharaj made him a devotee. And he practically led kirtan for 14 hours straight while Gunagrahi Maharaj was in that process. And other, Ratatvija Swami was there, Purijan Prabhu, and many Prabhupada disciples came in. But Govinda Maharaj, he was like practically shouting in Gunagrahi Maharaj's ear. Like, he didn't want to take the slightest chance that even for a moment, Maharaj's mind might divert here or there. But he was just so intent that he must hear the holy name at the end. And he went on for like 14 hours. It was really incredible. It's like superhuman. So that's, in a way, a testimony to Gunagrahi, obviously, to Gunagrahi Maharaj's effect on Govinda Maharaj, making him a devotee. And it's also, of course, to Govinda Maharaj's credit also that he maintained that sense of appreciation and gratitude, so held it so fervently in his heart, up to the end. Yeah, then there was the placing him in samadhi. I got a message, I got a message from Ratatvija Swami saying that there was some discussion in the VEB, Vrindavan Executive Board, that they didn't want to have any more samadhis for ISKCON devotees where they had them near the Goshala. And he was very concerned and very upset because he felt Maharaj should have a place there. So I prayed and I wrote a letter to Panchagota Prabhu, who's the temple president in Vrindavan, and I said, I've heard this. I don't know if it's true, but I don't agree with it. And, and then Panchagota Prabhu wrote back, something like, no, there is room for at least one more, so we'll reserve that. We'll reserve that for Gunagrahi Maharaj. So I think that's fit that we can go there and visit him. And yeah, it was my privilege to be able to offer my house to him, and he really used it. Those kirtans. Of course, someone said in like a needle and out like a plow. It was a very small thing, but he gave it a new name. So we would communicate on WhatsApp. I said, Maharaj, I'm happy that you're using the house, but you've renamed it. Don't you think that's a little much? And he said, yeah, you're right. Sometimes they get a little over-enthusiastic. No, you're right. But it was really an honor and privilege that I could offer that facility to him and his servants, And those kirtans in the evening, they were like famous. And I heard later they were like on Facebook Live, and people were tuning in from all over the world to those kirtans. So yeah, he was a real preacher, real soldier, real general, real friend, real devotee. And yeah, we miss him, but his example and ideals give us guidance in our life and a purpose that we can please him by following in his footsteps and following the ideals that he stood for. So thank you all for being part of it, for being embodiments in different ways of